All right, so let's get into professional tennis. And not just for the amazing volleys and backhands this time. We're taking a deep dive into the super complex world of anti-doping. The case of Iga Świątek.
Yeah.
You probably know her, the world's #2 player.
Yeah.
But recently, she was facing a doping suspension, but at the same time, cleared of significant fault or negligence. So how is that even possible?
Yeah. It's definitely confusing. And it's been a hot topic in the tennis world. So basically, Świątek tested positive for trimetazidine, we'll just call it TMZ. It's used to treat heart conditions, but it can also boost endurance. So, yeah, that's why it's banned in competitive sports.
Okay, so that's the positive test.
Yeah, correct.
How did she avoid a serious penalty if TMZ is a no-go?
Right, so that's where the no significant fault part comes in. The International Tennis Integrity Agency, the ITIA, they handle these cases, and they accepted Świątek's explanation that the TMZ wasn't intentional, not a performance-boosting thing. It came from, get this, contaminated melatonin supplements. Apparently, she was using them for jet lag and sleep, which, you know, a lot of athletes on tour deal with that.
So she accidentally took a banned substance. I mean, does this mean all athletes have to be?
Yeah.
Like, super careful about their supplements now?
Absolutely. Most already are incredibly careful. But this case really highlights how tricky it can be. Imagine going through intense training, strict diet, then accidentally taking something. That could end your career. It's like a nightmare for any athlete.
I can see that. So what were the consequences for Swiatek? Did she get off completely?
Well, not totally. The ICIA acknowledged it wasn't intentional doping. But she still got a 1-month suspension. It's pretty light compared to what some athletes have faced, but it still sends a message. Even unintentional ingestion has consequences.
Right. Makes sense. There's got to be accountability, even if we on purpose. But this whole thing brings up some tough questions. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, how do you make things fair when athletes are responsible for everything they ingest, even if it's contaminated? How much responsibility falls on the supplement companies? And how can athletes protect themselves from these accidental violations?
That's a good question. So, are we saying that Świątek was totally innocent?
Well, it's not that straightforward. She might not have taken TMZ intentionally. But the question is, could she have been more careful? Could her team have checked the supplements more thoroughly? Or was it just bad luck, a loophole in the system? That's something a lot of people are thinking about right now.
Yeah. This contaminated melatonin thing seems like it's shaken up the tennis world.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. In fact, there's another big case. Halep, a former world #1. It adds another layer to all this.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about her case. This is going to get interesting. Yeah, so Halep's situation, it's a little different, but it shows how the ITA, you know, how they handle these cases might not be totally consistent. Like Świątek, Halep tested positive for a banned substance, roxadustat this time. And she also said it was from a contaminated supplement.
Okay. So same basic situation, different substance. What's the difference in how they were treated?
The outcome was totally different. Halep got a 4-year ban at first, later reduced to 9 months. But still, a huge suspension, especially for a top player. And she says she's innocent.
Wow. 9 months versus 1 month. That's a big difference. I bet Halep is furious.
Oh, yeah. She's really frustrated. She even said she felt like the ITA was trying to, you know, destroy her career. And a lot of players and fans agree with her. They see it as a double standard, especially compared to Świątek.
Yeah, it does seem like a double standard, at least on the surface. But doesn't the ITA say they treat each case individually? What's their take on this?
Right. They say they evaluate each case based on the evidence. They deny any bias or favoritism. But it's hard to ignore when you see such different outcomes in similar situations.
What's the big difference? Why was Halep punished so much more?
Well, one key factor seems to be how quickly they found the source of the substance, Świątek. She was able to identify the contaminated melatonin pretty quickly, which helped her case. And it was resolved faster.
Oh, so does that mean if an athlete can't immediately figure out the source, they're at a disadvantage?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are worried about. It could mean the system favors those who can afford to investigate quickly. You know, top lawyers and scientists, while others might struggle to defend themselves.
Yikes, that doesn't seem fair at all. Like one set of rules for the rich and famous and another for everyone else.
Right, and that's eroding trust in the system. Players are starting to wonder if it's really a level playing field. If a star player like Świątek can get a light penalty for doping, what does it say to everyone else?
Right. It's complicated for sure. On the one hand, you want to keep the sport clean and prevent doping. But you also want to be fair and make sure athletes aren't punished for things they can't control. How do you find that balance?
That's the big question. And sporting bodies all over the world are trying to figure it out. It's a constant evolution of the rules, the testing, the procedures. But cases like these make us look at the system again and ask, is it really fair? Is it working the way it should?
Yeah, more questions than answers. What do you think is the biggest problem here?
Yeah, for me, it's the inconsistency. If athletes think the system is random or that the outcome depends on things they can't control, it just creates doubt.
Right, I agree. The whole point of anti-doping is to make sure everything is fair and to keep the sport credible. But if people are questioning those things, then the whole system falls apart.
Exactly. So what can we do? Are there any solutions to make the system more trustworthy? Well, there are some ideas. One is to change how the burden of proof works when it comes to contaminated supplements. Right now, it's mostly on the athlete. To prove they didn't know, they took the substance. Some people argue that's not fair because it's really hard to check every supplement.
Right. Imagine having to test every single batch of everything. That's got to be expensive and time-consuming.
Exactly. So some people think supplement companies should be more responsible for making sure their products are clean, maybe stricter regulations, more testing.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to start. What else?
Another idea is a clearer appeals process, one that's seen as fair and unbiased. Maybe independent panels reviewing the evidence, making sure all athletes have good lawyers.
It seems like these cases become legal battles, which must be hard for the athletes. They're already under so much pressure.
For sure. A simpler and more transparent process would definitely help.
It would build confidence.
Exactly. And it's not just about the athletes. It's about the sport. Fans need to believe that the competition is fair. They want to see athletes succeed because of their skill and hard work, not because of some loophole or because they have a fancy lawyer.
This is a tough issue with no easy answers.
It is, but it's an important conversation to have.
This deep dive has been really insightful.
It has.
It makes you think about the bigger picture,
right?
About the challenges athletes face. In a world with such high stakes, where right and wrong aren't always clear-cut.
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do with these deep dives, give you the information so you can make your own conclusions.
So, as we wrap things up, what's the main takeaway for listeners?
I think it's this. With anti-doping, it's always a balancing act, protecting the sport, but also being fair to the athletes. Finding that balance is hard. It requires open discussion, critical thinking, and a willingness to adapt.
Couldn't agree more. Really appreciate you joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
To all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.